It's always funny when I come across those Uncle Rico military veterans. We all know those veterans, right? That are so stuck inside their glory days, thinking that their combat action ribbons matter inside the civilian world. Here's the thing, is they all serve a purpose, right? Nothing's wrong with talking about your military experience with your military friends and buddies when you're catching up. However, as you will learn inside this episode, many veterans get stuck by simply still living in their past to only get slapped across the face by the present moment. Ambitious Fit, let me ask you this question. What would it be like if you shifted your mindset from fixed to growth by simply getting out of Uncle Rico's van finally?
Thing is, I don't know if it's the same in the Army or the Air Force, but I know in the Navy and Marines, if you're stuck on a ship for 6 months, you go through the DVD collection pretty quickly. So a lot of nights spent watching movies. But yeah, Rico kind of sums it up. The guy is really not doing much. You know, he's nothing wrong with the guy, but he's still living 20 years ago.
Ambitious Vet, if you didn't know already, I am a best-selling Amazon author. I know you're maybe thinking, oh, this is United States Marine author, doesn't mix. I promise I am. I published a ebook called 10 Steps to Predicted Success Out of the Uniform. What I'm calling just a proven step-by-step guide to creating an impactful and sustainable life out of the uniform. Why it means so important to me, and I think it would mean a lot for you to pick it up, is that every step I share within these 10 steps is I share right afterwards a personal story from me getting out back in May of 2012, beginning my transition on a wrestling mat, only owning a school desk to my name because I was so financially illiterate, living in an apartment in San Diego I could not afford, to now coaching leadership programs for legendary global personal development companies, climbed up a corporate ladder as a sales trainer role for one of the largest online internet marketing companies for real estate agents, and now influencing thousands through podcasting, coaching, speaking, and programs within the Ambitious Vet network. This Ambitious Vet is literally my no bullshit field guide to creating tangible and fulfilling success out of the uniform for you out there that maybe just like me, back in May of 2012, who was seeking the secret formula to success, but felt like I was the only one not finding the right color crayon in the crayon box, as in a Marine Corps inside joke. But I'll put the link to the Amazon link in the show notes below. And hell, you know what? If you email me inside of my email, inside the show notes, I'll send it to you for free. That's how much I know this ebook will impact your life. It's 32 pages. It's a field guide, step-by-step guide approach to creating fulfilling success in your life. It's yours. Email me for free. If you want to go pay $10 for it, go ahead on Amazon. Either way, this is for your life moving forward. Welcome to the Ambitious Vet Podcast. My name is Chris Hoffman. I'm a Marine Corps combat veteran turned social entrepreneur. Here, I dive into the trenches with today's most ambitious, goal-oriented, and growth-minded military veterans on the planet to empower you, Ambitious Vet, with the golden grenades needed to break through new levels of satisfaction, fulfillment, and success in your life, career, or business. Now, I must give you a quick disclaimer. We do say ums, we do say you knows, and just like life, it isn't perfect. Surprise, surprise. Neither is this show, but I promise you, Ambitious Vet, if you sit there and you listen, or you run, or you work out, and listen for the golden grenades, you'll find them that move your life forward. Buckle up. It's time to dive in.
It's time to get into the trenches, dig into your purpose, and fire up your life's fulfillment. The Ambitious Vet Podcast starts now.
What's going on, Ambitious Vet? Welcome right back inside the trenches today with Carl Forsling. Carl works in global military sales for Bell Textron. Previously, he flew EC-120 helicopters as a military officer for the Baltimore City Police. He recently retired from the U.S. Marine Corps after 20 years, serving as the CH-46E and MV-22B pilot and he transitioned back in 2015. He's originally from Ames, Iowa. Carl is a graduate of the Wharton School of University of Pennsylvania and has a master's degree from Boston University and Norwich University. He's married, has 2 children, and lives in Arlington, Texas. Ambitious vet. Also, what's exciting is we dive inside just some of his articles that he's been able to write for Coffee or Die columns within the Black Rifle Coffee brand, and also Task and Purpose columns. He's one of the top contributors for both brands. So I'm excited to bring you retired Marine Corps veteran who didn't settle for being a Baltimore City Police helicopter pilot to finding way, way more in life, Carl Forsling. Let's dive right in.
Carl, brother, are you there?
Right here. How you doing?
Man, I'm doing good. It's excited to be with another crayon eater, man. I mean, I did four now. You know, you had the honor, courage, commitment in your bloodstream to do 20, man. But it's exciting to be inside the trenches with another Marine.
Yeah, good to be here.
Good. All right, man. So tell us more about you and your background and what fuels your passion to just keep moving forward every single day of your life right now.
Well, I guess just sort of give you a little bit of background here. You know, I came into the Marine Corps. I did ROTC in college at University of Pennsylvania, and original dream was to be a Marine infantry officer. But I took the aviation aptitude test and came back okay. And I'm like, you know what? Flying beats walking 9 days out of 10. So I took that route.
True.
You know, definitely betraying the every Marine or rifleman thing, but turned out to be pretty good. So I ended up spending 20 years in the Marines. Almost 19 years of that was flying, which is pretty unusual. Usually you do a little bit more what the Marines call A billet, B billet. So you're going back and forth. I deliberately stayed in the cockpit, and that was, you know, from a Marine Corps perspective, probably not the wisest choice, but it was my passion. And definitely enjoyed it. You know, I visualized myself as a pilot. I did that time. I flew the old CH-46 Sea Knight or Battle Frog as a lieutenant and captain, and then I instructed in flight school. Then switched over to the V-22 Osprey, and I ended up being one of the first guys to fly that after it, you know, went through this long travails and finally returned to service. So I stood up a lot of was an instructor for a lot of the first squadrons that came through the training squadron there. And after 20 years, you know, you think of yourself as a pilot, and really to the exclusion of other things. And so, you know, the last, your EAS date, especially as a retiree, is coming up like a brick wall in front of your face. And I was calling, you know, going on all the aviation job boards, calling up all the buddies everywhere. I wanted to stay in that pilot that's for the aviation field sort of Action Jackson mentality. I looked at the contract gigs in Afghanistan with the various companies that do that. And I finally ended up, you know, getting a lead at Baltimore Police Department as a flight officer. And in Baltimore, it was, to my perception of myself then, it was a perfect fit in my mind. So it's, you know, I get to the Marine thing. You know, Baltimore is very unusual. I don't think we want to go too far into police aviation, how it works, but most of them, they make you be a police officer for a long time, or they hire contractors or city employees. Baltimore, you get licensed up as you do the police academy, you do all the field training in a police district in a police car, and then you go straight to the aviation unit. So I was like, wow, this is the best of both worlds. I'll, you know, get a badge and a gun, and I'll fly a helicopter. And it really did seem initially like, okay, dream come true. Plus it gave the external sense of purpose. You know, it's not, and I think a lot of veterans are this way. It's like, well, you know, public service of some form, either serving the country, serving their community, that gives them a lot of that definitely externally validated meaning. And I think I needed that. And it was, I can't, you know, I would not recommend it to anyone else if that's the route you want to take. But again, I think a lot of jobs that are skill dependent, vice leadership dependent, there's a topping out point. And some people are okay with that. But once you get initially qualified, you know, in a job like being a police helicopter pilot, or really in a lot of pilot jobs, you know, it's wash, rinse, repeat for however long it's going to be. So once I got in my first car chase done, once I'd done my first foot chase from the helicopter, once I chased a motorcycle, it's like, okay, there's about 3 varieties of things I'm going to be doing until my next retirement check. And that really was grinding on me. So about that point, a good friend of mine in the Marines, who was a lieutenant colonel at the time, he came to Baltimore on business, and I ended up seeing him, and he sort of sensed that I wasn't outwardly, it wasn't like I was griping or anything, but he sensed that I was not doing as well as he thought I could have. And he gave me a lead. Hey, one of our old COs is working at Bell, and I talked to him not long ago, and they say they're looking for guys to talk about V-22. We're experts in that field, and doing business development. Which, to be honest, even though I was a business major in college, I didn't know business development from a hole in the ground. And so I was like, okay, I'll give him a shout. And there, a chain of events happened, and almost by accident, I ended up in something that's a perfect fit for me. In that, one, I talk about aviation all the time for free, so getting to talk about aviation professionally is kind of lucking out. But the downside of that is, I spent, better part of probably 3 years at a minimum looking down the wrong road. And I think it's the military takes up so much of your identity, and your job in your military takes so much more of that, and probably more so in the Marines and in most places, that can really pigeonhole you both skills-wise and direction-wise and identity-wise. And I think that's me, and I think of myself, I'm not, I'm smarter than the average bear, at least. I think of myself as up to the upper 50th percentile, and I fell victim to that. So I can only imagine, hey, there's probably some other people out there who had similar difficulties, and some may or may not realize they are as out of place as they probably are, or at least underutilizing their abilities, I guess is another way to put it. Because I think we sell ourselves short oftentimes relative to other people because we get to that personal pigeonhole.
No, I agree. That's very interesting, because it's one thing that's in my head, man, is like, it's always good to have someone there to like believe in you and see something that you may not see. And I think a lot of us ambitious vets hit that benchmark at some point where someone just, hey, man, like, you're executing faster than your peers. Your productivity's, up there. What about this? And they open up new ideas. I mean, at that point, you said a lieutenant colonel came up and started talking to you, Carl?
Yeah, I mean, he was my CO, actually my last CO in the Marines. And then,
so he got out and generated new opportunity for you.
Yeah, he was flying from New River to Maryland to Pax River to do some Marine stuff, and he's took a drive up to Baltimore to see me, and just turned me on that, hey, you're sort of treading water here, and if you don't want to end up in the same exact position in 10 years, why don't you at least look at making a change? And eternally grateful for him for one, being invested in me, and then taking the time to refer me and give me the opportunity.
No, absolutely. And at that point, how long have you been inside the industry of aviation and just flying planes, flying helicopters in the air? How many years of experience did you have piled up at that point?
I mean, between 2 years flying civilian helicopters in Baltimore, and then the 20 years, about 18 of which are operational, not including your initial TBS and flight school. So yeah, better part of 2 decades. And wow. It turns out, it's like lots of other fields in the military, it pays a lot more to talk about helicopters than to fly helicopters. And the same is true for a lot of other things. That's, another buddy of mine, enlisted guy, actually, got out as a master gunnery sergeant. His field was communications and electronics, but he's doing business development in that field as well. It's one, just to show that you don't have to be an officer or have a college background, depending on where you're going. But point being, he transformed what's a very technical skill into another, turn that around and did something that adds value to it. That's unless you are exposed to that, you probably don't even know it exists. I didn't know there was a thing called business development. I thought, well, either you fly or you build, or what is this other thing? And there's always the Venn diagram of what you do, touches on a lot of other circles that you may or may not be aware of. Yeah. You really have to especially work that network and your friends of friends to turn you on to these things that you may not see if you're just bore-sighted on, well, I'm going to get out and I'm going to do the closest thing on the outside that I'm doing right now. Whether that's, there's a whole lot of infantrymen, as cops or whatever. It's like, oh, this is the closest thing. Yeah, well, yeah, but is that really what you want to do? Is that really what you want to do when you're 50 or 60 or whatever? Is keep doing that same thing till you run out of working life.
No, absolutely. I think those difficult questions, whenever you are feeling unhappy, frustrated, inside the trenches, ambitious vet throughout life, post-military, I think you need to ask those difficult questions, because sometimes I feel like it does open up opportunities for like a past relationship to pop up and create a new opportunity for someone that may provide perspective where you don't have it. And that's what I heard, that lieutenant colonel, your prior lieutenant colonel that got out, supplied to you, Carl, and that's amazing stuff. Now, I would ask you this, man. Our previous conversation, a lot. I brought up, I was just like, man, like being a helicopter pilot in Baltimore, how can that get like boring or repetitive? And you just said, hey, man, sometimes just things are better off as a stepping stone. Can you walk us through how you were able to just use that as a stepping stone, and also, how you have not stopped serving since you've got out of the Marine Corps and chasing that next mission?
Yeah, I mean, first, just realizing that, how can it be boring? I think anything can be if there's no change to it. I think the difference between the outside and the inside, a lot of these action, quote unquote action jobs is, in the military, there's always, either increased responsibility or another mission. I mean, even in aviation, you always go to a section leader, a division leader, in charge of more and more aircraft, or you're doing different types of inserts and there all this stuff. And same thing, any other field in the military, likely. But flying a police helicopter, like I said, once you're an aircraft commander, that's pretty much the last stop of promotions, unless you want to go into administration. There's only so many different ways you can do these things. There's only so many different ways you can fly over Baltimore's 80 square miles and make it new. So that's kind of, and I'll always have those memories. And again, it's an exciting time. For 2 years, there's a lot of stuff that I took out of that. But I think a big part of it is, the being willing to jump into the unknown to a little bit. And the military is all about predictability. And that's you like, I'm all right. If I spend 2 years time in grade, then I'll be eligible for the next rank. Or I do, this syllabus and I'll get this qualification. Everything's very linear. And there's always a next step. And the outside world is not linear. There is no, if I spend 2 years as this, I'll get promoted to this. No, you have to be ready to seize the opportunity when it strikes and be willing to jump out on a limb occasionally. There is no turnover manual to be ready for. And to be, make the point, no one expects there to be. The military, there's always an inspection, there's always a this, and there's a formula to doing it. And the outside world, you don't have that. So it's a tremendous amount of reassurance in the military, but it also builds fear to go outside that comfort zone. And sometimes you just need that nudge. In my case, is a friend saying, hey, dude, are you really up to doing this? And the answer is being no. And does your purpose have to be externally validated? No, it doesn't. I think in the military in particular, again, that external validation is huge. It's the awards, it's the meritorious mass, it's from the civilian world, the free admission to the ballpark, whatever it is. You get a whole lot of external validation, and you get in your mind that something externally has to tell you, oh, you're doing something worthwhile. And then a lot of the challenge is to turn that around, like, okay, what is making me happy internally from the inside out? What is making my life meaningful? Is it there? Obviously, it's hugely important that people serve. We need people to do all these jobs. And by all means, the fact that I didn't want to stay in the police for 20 or 30 years is not a hit on police. It's me identifying that uniform service is no longer something I had to do for fulfillment. And that there are other things, in my case, working in the military aerospace industry, making products that Marines, sailors, airmen fly, and making sure they get the requirements filled that they need. yeah, it's not in uniform. It's never going to compare it to someone, the service to someone in uniform, but that has to be done or the country doesn't get defended. So that
Mm.
work is still validating, still is important. And, being able to be content and being able to find satisfaction in that and changing that paradigm, that from external validation to internal, I think for me at least was a big step I had to take. And I think I'm probably not alone in that mindset, at least initially.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I feel like I know from my own story, getting out, I had to get beat up by life before I actually started even opening my mind to a growth minded, more perspective on life versus a fixed way of thinking, just tell me what to do. We've had multiple guests that we've interviewed on this show, man, where they're just like, well, biggest challenge I see with veterans getting out of the uniform is they go into a room or office, they're going to apply for career services at a university, is they go to that career counselor and just like, they ask the career counselor literally like, hey, tell me what to do. What do I need to do? And it really is shifting that mindset to not waiting for people to command you, but, hey, what makes me happy? What has me feel fulfilled, which is awesome. And I'm really excited to dive into this next topic to kind of just highlight one of your key writings that you sent over to me. I really appreciate it. Just some really awesome tip of the spear content, Ambitious Vet. If you're looking to kind of transition into the more growth minded, shift that paradigm and create more opportunities in your life and have more of that fulfillment, I definitely challenge you to go check out Carl's writings on Task and Purpose and also Black Rifle Coffee. But one of these articles, brother, really stood out to me. It was your time in service shouldn't be your glory years article that you wrote for Task and Purpose back in 2016. It was absolutely powerful, brother. And I love the reference of Uncle Rico from Napoleon Dynamite. And I caught that in one of your trends for your writings too, is you have a really good movie reference, which I think a lot of us military guys and gals, we get, right? Uncle Rico sitting in his van, bragging about his glory days. Walk us more about that mentality that a lot of ambitious veterans in general get out and fall victim to. And how can we actually get ahead of that?
Yeah, the movie reference I think is like shorthand for everything. I don't know if it's the same in the Army or the Air Force, but I know in the Navy and Marines, if you're stuck on a ship for 6 months, you go through the DVD collection pretty quickly. So a lot of nights spent watching movies. But yeah, Rico kind of sums it up. The guy is really not doing much. He's nothing wrong with the guy, but he's still living 20 years ago. And hey, I get it. I mean, like I said, I was looking for the Action Jackson thing coming out of the military because you don't want to let that go. That's so much of your identity. And honestly, it's the coolest thing you'll ever do. I mean, yeah, I like going out mountain biking or, going four-wheeling, but yeah, the time in Afghanistan with the MRAP or the MAT V going over the dunes, I mean, it's a way better thing. But you can't spend the rest of your and again, there's nothing wrong with hanging out with your buds or seeing them every so often and talking about what you did. I mean, that's why people go back to high school reunions, whatever. But the key thing is you can't look over your shoulder going back and then you hit something in the face going forward because you're not looking, or you just get stuck, talking about, oh, those are the great times, or you see people, a minute you've only spent a lot of people 4 years out of hopefully your life for 80 some years. So, barely 2%, I'm not doing math in public, but a very small percentage.
I'm same way, man. Same way.
So let's just say it's about 4 to 5% of your total lifespan is spent in here, but your entire identity gets built on that. And if it keeps you from going forward and finding those new experiences, finding those new sources of meaning, and maybe it is the coolest thing you'll ever do. I mean, hey, flying 200 feet over the ground on MVGs was awesome. You can't, no matter how rich you are, there's pretty no level of wealth that'll let you do that on the outside world. So it is literally a priceless experience, but you can't keep going back to that. You've got to keep moving forward, and being stuck on that and more than is justified, making sure that shouldn't be the best point of your life. It should be a stepping stone getting you to the next thing that's greater. And it may be different. You may never do something as quite as adrenaline high as you did in the military, but you've got your kids or your future grandkids or your your church or this, and you got to find something else that's going to, charge your battery again. Because that 4 years back when you were 22 shouldn't be the thing you're looking at when you're 50, still talking about on a daily basis. And that's, some of us get dry very quickly, but some of us don't, and some of us are in between. But that glory days thing, hey, it's great to have them, but you can't base your life on that, or you are the military Uncle Rico.
Throw a pigskin a quarter mile, right? I used to throw one a quarter mile. No, that's funny, because what I've learned in the corporate world too, man, just climbing up a ladder, even starting, growing a startup today, is like, civilian world is different in the respect of what have you done for me lately? It's kind of that kind of culture, right? What have you done for me lately? Versus, you have combat action ribbon, they don't care about that. They just don't, right?
Yeah. And I think we're gotten a little bit better. I'd say about 5 years ago, maybe a little bit more, we were at peak veteran entitlement attitude. And it was just because the wars are still in everyone's front of minds, and there's so much adulation coming to vets, and which is deserved. But don't believe your own propaganda. Don't believe you're as good as your own press releases, and don't let it go to your head. Just because they said thank you for your service. One, that doesn't mean they're going to offer you a job. It means they're doing the absolute minimum required. So, two, don't think you're entitled to something in excess. You did a fine day's work in the service of your country. A honest day's work for an honest day's pay for however long you're in, and once you're out, that's pretty much all there is. There's a thank you for your service, and you get whatever the government benefits were promised you. And other than that, you're on your own. And if you think anyone owes you anything, even the thank you, you're probably going a little bit, past your skis on this. So you just got to ratchet back and realize it's, the experience you got in the military and the benefits that you get in the military, you got paid in full. So from here on out, you're on your own. So take it as such.
Yeah. Speaking of which, right, military experience, that's super important, right? And learning how to leverage that to create economical value in the marketplace out of the uniform, which a lot of veterans figured out. Some figure it out sooner than others. But more importantly, we've got to figure out how to create individual goals, right? And I would just ask you this, Carl, in your experience, right? How do we leverage our military experience to identify like an individual goal, and just kind of pursue that consistently, right? Versus, waiting for people to tell us what to do, kind of what we've been talking about throughout the show, because, the military does a damn good job as far as having us think institutionalized way of thinking. So how do we, identify individual goals and leverage our military experience?
Yeah, I think there's two things you got to keep in mind. One is, all right, what gives you meaning? And think more broadly, like we talked about earlier. You can't, don't look for external validation. And to the country and the public service, I add, this is probably might be unpopular in some cases, is to say that includes to some extent your family. You are the one signing up for whatever it is. So make sure that if you do that and you make a sacrifice, don't be a martyr about it. So if you make whether it's, and this comes true either in the staying in or getting out of the military. And I, as a divorced guy, I'll take it, my own hit is I stayed in, partly for family reasons. And, that's on me. Ended up getting the V-22. I was very happy with that, but that's a mistake of taking, all right, someone else wants me to be in the military. Okay. But you can't hold that against them once you make that decision. That's on you at that point. But at the same point, you got to make sure this is, you're the one who is signing up for an extra tour. You're the one moving. You're the one doing, signing up to spend 9 to 5 somewhere. Make sure it's right for you, not for anyone else, not for your country, not for your city, that you can deal with this. And make sure you have something that's going to give you meaning. And the other thing is, first, so that's your Venn diagram of meaning. And then the other piece is your skills. Now, we talked about before, A lot of time we're too zeroed in on the skill itself. What the military really equipped you with is just like emotional intelligence. All the experts say that's way more valuable than a lot of academic or intellectual intelligence in many cases, or if not most. So it's that emotional intelligence, that personal resiliency, those character building traits. Those are your real value adds out of the military, because any business can find someone who can do skill X. There's trade schools, there's colleges, there's people with masters and PhDs that you are going to be competing with depending on your field. But if those are prerequisites in the field you want to go into, obviously you have to get those. But the differentiator, just like any other business, what's your differentiator? What differentiator is these skills I learned in the military, and you have to be able to communicate those effectively. And that's the other challenge. Sort of circle back is no one knows what a squadron commander even is, or a squad leader, or the difference between a squad leader and a squadron commander is large. But someone on the outside does not know the difference. And to think that's, oh, I was in the military for X number of years, I was a sergeant, or I was a captain, or I was a colonel, means nothing to these people. So keep that in mind as far as scaling this is, what's my value proposition? How do I communicate that in a way they understand that's relevant to the job we're doing? Now, if your military skill happens to be in that connecting those Venn diagrams, that's awesome. You've got one up on everyone else. But between your emotional skills and your personal skills you learn in the military, your what gives you purpose and to your life and to your work life, and then what your actual technical skills are, the closer those circles can overlap, then that's finding your bullseye zone for your post-military endeavors.
It's really awesome. That's a great framework. And the thing that popped out to me, Ambitious Vet, and hopefully you're taking notes just like I am, is finding your differentiator and knowing how to communicate it. And if you don't know, reaching out to someone that knows how to identify your core differentiators, kind of like Carl's retired lieutenant colonel that kind of came back in his life later as a police pilot in Baltimore, right? Wow, I still can't believe you were a police pilot in Baltimore, brother. That'd be intense. It's crazy. But finding your differentiator, Ambitious Vet, that is key in learning how to communicate. That's amazing. So we're kind of coming to the conclusion of the show, Carl, but I want to get to a point where we can kind of sum this entire thing up with your 3 golden grenades. These are wisdom bombs. Really, what would you tell ambitious vets listening to this? You can sum up the show, break down some key golden grenades as far as mindset, how to accelerate our path to life fulfillment. What would be your 3 golden grenades that you could drop for us right now?
Well, I was thinking about this right before it came on. So first thing I'd say is there's no turnover binders in the civilian world. All right. So anyone who's, been in the military in any sort of like responsible position knows, like, the last guy who had the job turns you over a big binder full of all the tips to what you do on the daily schedule. And then, oh yeah, the next inspection is in 6 months, and he's going to look at these things and have those wired and have these letters in the folder from the CO and yada, yada, yada. That degree of instruction is gone the second you step, the other way with your DD-214, and that's good and bad, right? Because on one side, no one's going to give you instruction, but on the other side, no one's going to give you instruction. So, you have a lot more freedom to draw the picture you want of your life and of what you do than you ever had before. And so you got to use that wisely, and that's a huge opportunity. But you also got to be aware there's a lot less net than there ever was in the military. Once you step outside those doors.
Absolutely.
Sort of going into that though is, as I sort of summarize it and it's sort of flippant, but no one else knows what they're doing either. All right. So we're always, and this I think is maybe accentuated by the social media and everything, from top to bottom in our society, but in the military even more, is you see what everyone else, hey, he's so-and-so's, just got, selected for this in the military, and oh yeah, look on Facebook, and they just bought this awesome house, and he's retired and went to this awesome place. What am I doing? And it's easy to feel overwhelmed, even like a sense of inferiority, like, gee, everyone else is hitting home runs, and I don't even know what I'm doing. Right. Guess what? They don't know either. and there's nothing holding you back. One, even if they are successful, there's really no difference between you and them. And two, you
That's
bet that
good.
person is looking for the answers just like you are. So don't let that intimidate you
That's
before
good,
you
brother.
go on a similar path. And I guess the last thing, Code goes hand in hand with that. And all three of these things kind of link together is no one cares about it as much about you as you think they do. And that's both good and bad. You tend to think like, oh, everyone's looking at every move, and judging me and seeing, I've got to be No, the perfection is the thing that's going to lead you to paralysis. So accept that there's going to be some rough edges. Obviously strive for perfection in your work, but don't let the perfect the enemy of the good. If you're the last 20% of any effort, last 20% of results takes 80% of the effort. So once you get to that point of diminishing returns and you're confident in yourself, go take the leap, and don't be afraid that people are going to think bad. They got their own stuff to worry about. All right. Everyone's worried just as much about their stuff as you are about yours. They don't have enough time to worry about you. So take care of yourself and don't worry about other people think. Try and find, what makes you happy and what gives you that fulfillment, and move out and take charge and move in that direction.
Oh, boom. Carl, that was huge, man. I'm over here wondering, man, are you doing speaking engagements on top of writing thought leadership content as well? Because I'm like over here just grabbing the golden grenades. I know I needed to hear the second one, right? Just no one else knows what they're doing either. I think that's just huge. It's great stuff. Carl, where can Ambitious Vet go read more of your thought leadership writing within the community, or just connect with you as a person?
Well, read more of my stuff at both taskandpurpose.com, as a lot of my stuff on military culture and getting out experience. Lately, I've been working a lot for coffeeordie.com, a lot of military topics and current events. Be working on an ebook for later this year. A lot of these similar thoughts. So keep an eye out for that. Hopefully I'll be able to join you later on. As always, welcome to hear your listeners on LinkedIn. Just send me a note along with the request so I know where you heard me from, and I'm more than happy to connect with any of your listeners and talk some more with them.
It's awesome. Carl, man, I just want to acknowledge you for who you are, man. You got out of the uniform, as a Marine, and didn't look back into your glory days and continued to, just grinded and always look for the next steps. And the most important lesson I learned is don't be an Uncle Rico. That's what I learned. So, brother,
Yes.
Thanks for joining the show.
No problem. My pleasure. Anytime.
The Ambitious Vet is available on all popular podcast platforms. Go to vettrainingcoaching.com to subscribe, rate, and share with fellow vets.
Ambitious Vet, before you go, don't forget to click the link in the show notes below to check out my best-selling ebook, 10 Steps to Predict Success Out of the Uniform. It's a no bullshit guide to what it takes to actually create the fulfilling success that a lot of us ambitious vets want to achieve. Believe it or not, it went number 34 within 24 hours within vocational guidance. So click the show notes below. If you want it for free, go ahead, click my email in the show notes below. Say, hey, Chris, I want it. I want to do what it takes. I want to learn from your story of getting out, living on a wrestling mat, to climbing up corporate ladders and building a global influence. I'll send it to you for free. Until next time, Ambitious Vet, hold the vision and trust the process.